Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. Tuesday, Owner's Stories Day. Again, it comes around very quickly. I know you guys enjoy this one. I always say that every week, but I know you guys enjoy it. It's a great series. I'm still really enjoying talking to all the owners. Man, we've had a great variety now. We're into number 44 today, and it just keeps getting better, I think. You know what I mean? Not better as in the stories are better, but we just keep getting so much variety and so many different types of cars, different Porsches. It's been good. I hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode with Dan, and his 924. That was a great story. It shows that you can still find cars at good prices. You put a little bit more into them, they might only cost you 10 grand or 15 grand. If you can find one, and you put another 5 or 6 grand in, and you've got a great Porsche to enjoy. It's not always about performance, as we know. It's about the experience, and that's what's important. So today I'm going to be joined very shortly. I'm running late. I've been running around like crazy today, I have to say. I'm in London. We bought an apartment, and there's been a few issues, and I've been running around trying to sort that out. So I have been flustered, and it's also like, I think, sub 30 degrees here in London. Anyone in the UK understands that that's a heat wave. Anyone outside of the UK is going, what are you complaining about? 30 degrees is not hot. 30 degrees, 29, 30 degrees in London, I'm telling you now, is absolutely stifling. And I've lived I live in the Middle East part-time full-time, I should say. I have been. And, I'm used to very high temperatures. And I'm telling you, this temperature in London is really, really hard to get used to. And I don't know why, but it is. Anyway, enough about the weather. I've got 2 minutes. I'm going to get Pete on the line. Like I said, Pete's coming in from Minnesota in the US. Pete's got a great story. It's a Porsche story, and it's not a story we've really heard before, but it's an experience that other people have gone through, and we all acquire our cars in different ways. We acquire our Porsches in different ways. They all mean something to each of us. Sometimes they're a little bit, I'm not saying an unhappy story, but it is. What am I trying to say? Sometimes we acquire a car because someone else is passed, or someone else has lost that car for whatever reason, or can't drive that car anymore. So it's Pete's story has that part of it, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Pete has reached out to me quite a while ago. It's taken me a while to get back to him. I'm still doing the owner stories, like I said. I am slowing down because my workload at the moment with the project I'm working on, which comes to a head in the next 2 months, is getting really intense. So it's really, really hard for me to do more than to really record these in advance anymore. I'm literally recording this 1 week in advance. That's it. This is next week's episode. I'm recording this 1 week before it goes on live on Apple and everything. So I'm a little bit behind. I'm trying to catch up. There's quite a few people who still there's a lot of people that want to talk to me. I want to talk to everyone. I'm just a little bit slow at the moment because my day job is really taking priority. But anyway, let me get Pete on the line. Pete's got a great story. So let me get him on the line. This is Pete from Minnesota talking about his PorscheCooled owner story. Welcome back, everyone. Pete has now joined me. Pete's coming in from Minnesota. Like you guys know, we do these by Zoom. They're done by Zoom. It's Monday afternoon here in London. It's a very hot London afternoon, actually. Welcome, Pete. How are you?
I am doing well.
Thanks for coming on the podcast. I'm glad that we managed to get this scheduled. I did cancel on Pete last week, I should tell the listeners, and we've rescheduled today. How was your weekend? I just want to start with that, actually. I usually start with the other question, but I just want to say you were going to Road America. How was that?
I've never been to Road America, and so it was my first time. I've got a friend that has gone, year after year with his dad and his brother over the years, and has always told me how fun it is, and I've never really been able to go. This year we said, let's do it. We drove a van down there and did some camping at the track. There's nothing quite like being woken up early in the morning with someone blow drying the track to dry it off for race cars.
Sounds good. Sounds like a fun weekend. So is that a long drive?
It was a long one.
Is it a long drive?
Yeah, I'm trying to think how many hours. We broke it up on the way down, but it's probably 6 hours each direction. So it's not terrible.
A good road trip. Definitely a good road trip.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get into it. And I kind of led into it in the intro that you haven't heard yet, Pete. I kind of led into the intro that this is a slightly different story than I've had before. And, people acquire cars in different ways. But we'll get onto that later in the podcast. But before we start there, when it comes to Porsche, and I always like to ask this question with all the previous owners as well. It's like when it comes to Porsche, is it a car? Is it a car, the 911 or Porsche in general? Is it something that you've been looking at for a long time? Is it something you noticed when you were a kid? Or is it something that has just sort of come into your life in the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, cars just in general, my father actually is a plastics engineer. And so he ended up moving to Ohio from Minnesota. He's originally from Minnesota and worked for General Motors. And so he originally went down there to work on the airbag, a little thing called the airbag for General Motors. And so he was always a car guy. He had, every year I think it was, you get a Corvette, you get a Cadillac, and then you eventually sell it to your neighbors or your family members. And so, I always joke that sometimes like our family reunions would look more like Elvis's family reunion with a bunch of Cadillacs there, because my uncle would have one and my grandma would have one and things like that. So he was definitely an American car guy,
Yeah. What year were the Cadillacs and the Corvettes?
Man, his Corvette started in the 60s. So he had the split back, and then he's had an 81 and 84, a bunch of 80s. My dad's 75. He honestly just bought a 2016 Vet last fall. So he's continuing to stay in the game there, so to speak. Cadillacs were early 80s. I was born in 71. So you start to recall the cars, more towards the late 70s and early 80s for me. But he did that for a while, and then moved, my folks moved back up here to Minnesota, and he's just gone on to some plastics companies. So not necessarily in automotive, but always stayed close to Corvettes. And, for me, it was just, my dad had a Corvette. So it was like the opportunity to be able to, sneak a drive in there, or, your friends would know that your dad has a Corvette and want to find out more about it. And, I wasn't really into being in a small town in Minnesota. You don't really have the opportunity to have, at least at that time, German cars, the ability to get a local garage to work on a German car. And so that kind of kept my dad away from German engineering. But, there's a few people that did, right? So when you're in the 80s here in the States, you see a red 911, you take note.
It's funny that everyone's memory, around the same time is always a memory of a red Porsche or a red 911. It seems like every car that was in smaller towns or in smaller towns in the US or even in Australia, it's always a red Porsche. I don't know why that's the case, but it always seems to be a red Porsche. I guess it was a popular color during the 70s and 80s. So you're immersed in that American car culture, and your dad's owned some great cars, right? Cadillacs and Corvettes. So do you, when you start thinking about getting your own car, do you just borrow your dad's, or you think, hey, I'm going to get a Corvette, I'm going to get some other American muscle car, or how does it progress for you when you start getting your license and driving?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get my own car right away in high school. I didn't get one till college, and it was a stick shift. It was a Ford EXP, which is like a small two-door. It had, my first car had didn't really have a parking brake, and it lived in a hilly area, so I'd have to find some creative places to park. But
so you do that. You do that trick, Pete, where you turn the wheels into the gutter, right? So it doesn't roll down the street.
For sure. Or find a parking spot that you could, that was nice and flat. But, I didn't really have aspirations to get into sports cars. It kind of felt like my dad had that on lockdown, and that was kind of his MO. And for me, I was always looking for cars that were a little bit more, utilitarian for skiing and snowboarding and carrying bikes around and things like that. So over the years, that's really where I put a lot of my effort was into that. Frankly, I started getting into wagons and sport wagons as of late. That's kind of where I've gone, is towards Volvo and stuff. But, I didn't really have aspiration to get a sports car. I didn't think it was in me, if that makes sense. I didn't think that it was, a good fit for me, because I just was, a little bit more, I don't know, a little more, a little more down to earth when it comes to that type of thing, So you found German cars like Porsche, for example. You found them flashy at the time, or you found them that your lifestyle suited other cars better?
And I think what you said about the servicing side of it, about the fact that, like you live in a town where there's not really any specialist to service a car. You don't see that many. I mean, those sort of things were in my head when I was younger as well. I lived in, smaller towns. It's not something you really thought about buying because you just thought it was going to be way too expensive. Having owned a Porsche, and you probably found this as well, they're surprisingly not that expensive to upkeep. So it's a lifestyle choice, isn't it? It's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah, it really is. And it's like, it just felt like I had a lot going on over the years, when I think about, having kids or getting your first house or investing wisely, it just felt to me like it was too selfish for me to go and get myself a toy car or a sports car, and, when it came to fruition or it came to happen, I just kind of threw it out, threw those thoughts out the window. Why not me? Why not try it? It's not horribly expensive to get into. You can do the work yourself. I am in an area that has lots of garages, whether that be independents or whatnot. But there's a lot of people around that have Porsches that you can compare notes with too. I've got a few friends that are, I met through bike racing and stuff, and they've got Porsches, and so now we spend a fair amount of time comparing notes amongst each other.
Yeah, I think, and we'll get into your story now, but I think the thing about Porsche is that the parts are quite readily available. You know what I mean? They're reasonably readily available. A lot of people still work on 996s, 997s, even their air-cooleds. I've spoken to people on owner's stories before, like Amir, who was had the two Cabriolets, 993 and 997. He did the work on both of them. Both of them, the air-cooled being much more difficult than the 997. So, it's not a difficult task. I'm not one of those people that do that. I'm a bit lazy and I can't be bothered, so I just take it to the specialist. And there's probably I think in the Porsche community, I think it's probably 50-50, don't you think? I mean, I think 50% of people are doing it themselves, and maybe the other 50 are just, they don't really want to do that. But because of that, there's so much information, Pete, out there that you can actually do it yourself. There's so many things online and so many people willing to help. And I think that's what's great about owning a Porsche, actually.
Yeah, it seems like people want to solve problems, right? They want to help each other solve problems.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so you're not really interested in German cars. You're not really interested in sports cars. You're not really a Porsche guy. And, this is where the sad part of the story begins. And I think it's best if you tell the listeners how it all came about. So not wanting a Porsche, and then, a year ago or so, wasn't it? A year ago, you acquired one. So tell the listeners how this came about of acquiring this Porsche and the story behind it.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of friends. And so my buddy, Steve, and his brother, Mike, were good friends. I met them in college. We're really into cycling and all the college things. And they taught me a lot about, European cycling and the etiquette of it all, and understanding more and more about European culture, European cars. My buddy Mike was really into cars. I mean, both Mike and Steve were into cars. Their dad was into it. They actually went to Road America quite a bit with their dad. And he passed away some years ago, pretty young, but the two of those guys kept going to Road America and are good friends. They're good friends. They're brothers. They're good friends, both into cars, always trying to kind of, I don't want to say outdo each other, but competitive with each other, and saw similar likes. And my buddy Mike ended up buying this, the Porsche that I ended up with, and it's a 996. It's a 2000 guards red. It has BBS wheels on it that are period correct, but obviously not the factory ones. It's been lowered a little bit. It looked pretty hot, and he ended up getting that car, and he'd been into other cars as well, always doing car auctions and, kind of buying and selling cars. And he ended up with this car a few years ago. And then my friend Steve, once his brother got that car, he couldn't be stopped. He had to have one, right? So he went out and found a 996.2 Targa.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so
a 996.2 Targa. Wow, that's a rare one.
Yeah, it is. We go places too, and people, it's a head turner because you don't see a ton of them, right? It's got the whole glass top, and
yeah, absolutely.
It's that car's beautiful. So Yeah, they both had cars. And then, when Steve bought one, I'm like, you're trying to keep up with Mike. I don't know, man. Is that really what you need? Is that where you should be putting your money? It's me being like,
Yeah.
too practical. And, but it made a ton of sense after he got it. He talked about how reliable these cars are. He gave me the whole ugly duckling story of, when when water cooled came out and the headlights and all that stuff. So I didn't really know the background, right, of desired versus less desired.
Yeah. Sorry, Pete. So you enjoyed some drives with him in that car? You went on some drives with him in the car or not?
Yeah. And he's got one of those sea sucker racks. So we can put mountain bikes on it. That turns some heads when you're driving around town with a couple of mountain bikes on it too. But we've done some drives. We've done some road trips in it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I kind of got to know, and these guys are living in different cities, right? So Steve's here in Minneapolis and Mike was in eastern Wisconsin. Right. And so, I mean, the sad part of the story is, Mike ended up passing away last summer, right? It was a drowning off of a pontoon boat. He was in great physical shape, and, just a shocker, right? Shook all of us. A lot of unanswered things. A lot of emotions with it and stuff. So like that happened last August, early August. And when we went down to the funeral and spent some time in Wisconsin, Steve's like, hey, maybe you should buy Mike's car. And to me, as soon as I saw it and as soon as he said it, it just kind of made sense in my mind that I was going to do that.
That's great.
So,
I mean, that's sad, but that's great that you've taken, I mean, the memories, because you've been in that car before, and the fact that you're friends with Steve, is it Mike's brother?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're friend with Steve, and he's got the 911. So you decided on the spot. You thought, I need to have this car. I need to have this car because it was my friend's car.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, I mean, selfishly, I'm like, hey, man, my wife's going to go for this. It was one of those scenarios where you see it, and it just made sense at the time. It was so incredible to see. I got to be in and around it a lot at that time, on that weekend. And then, I came back home and, took a couple of weeks to process it all and actually, purchase the car. And then, so, a little time went by and it was time to go pick up the car. And so, we were going to a mountain bike race in Wisconsin, and we took Steve's Targo with the mountain bikes on the Sea Sucker and stayed at a cabin. And then on Sunday, kind of on the way home, but a roundabout way, we drove over to Stevens Point, actually, Wisconsin, and met someone who drove it up. And, honestly, I'd never driven the car before. And I was signing the paperwork and driving away in a red 911, it was really surreal. But the drive home was amazing. Wisconsin roads are rolling and a lot of fun if you do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's come back to that. Let's go back to the car. So tell the listeners, I know you just touched on it before. So tell the listeners exactly what your car is. It's a 996, but tell them exactly the year, color, if there's any options that you know about now that you didn't know about before. As much as you can remember, as much as you know about your car, just let the listeners know. Yeah.
So it's a 2000 Carrera 2 911. So it's a 996. Has clear headlights, doesn't have the orange amber on there.
Yep. Nice.
It's guards red, which is a real head turner. The paint's in pretty incredible shape. There's no like fading or anything like that. It seems like it's been covered quite a bit. So, it has BBS wheels on it, which are not stock and are, quite period correct and look good on it. And it's had some lowering springs to what we call the European ride height, which you would probably get a chuckle at. Apparently they jack them up here.
Okay.
And then, it had pretty low mileage. It had 53,000 miles when I got it. And, I don't know. It was
Sorry, Pete. Do you have much of the history that your friend looked after the car quite well? He actually had all the history of the car. Did he service it himself, or did he get it serviced elsewhere? You said he owned the car for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, I think it was a few years. So, there's definitely some history I don't have. I mean, the car appears to have had a lot of owners. The car originally started in Minneapolis here in St. Paul at the St. Paul Porsche dealership. I think it spent some time in Iowa,
Okay.
some time in Wisconsin, so it got moved around a little bit. As far as like work that's been done to it, it had the IMS done and some other work done in Wisconsin at an independent. And actually we saw the independent. I'm not sure the name of the shop, but we did see them down at Road America.
Okay.
So they're involved in the community for sure. So, it seemed to have had decent work to it. My friend Steve, knew a fair amount about them and stuff. So knowing that the IMS had been done and some of the other things that you should look out for, it's kind of nice to have someone that was already kind of there and already been through the shopping, for such a car. So, but yeah, there's a lot that I don't know, but it's in great shape, and it doesn't seem like the many owners have abused it too much. If that makes any sense.
That's good because I'm a big fan of pre-purchase inspections and things like that. But this is a different scenario. This is a different story for you. So it wasn't really about how good or bad the car was it, when you purchased it? It was more about that you wanted to have this car as a memory of your friend and to share something that he'd actually owned and enjoyed. So that side of it, you were just thinking, well, the cost is the cost, and then I'm going to enjoy it along the way. Is that how you kind of looked at it?
That's pretty much how it went. Yeah. I mean, someone being a little more cautious would definitely get a PPI, right? Everyone talks about how smart that is. And if I was buying a car from someone off the street, I would definitely be doing that. But for me, it was people were familiar with the car, the situation. It didn't seem like negotiating or getting inspections was really the route I was going. It seemed like it made sense for the money. And so I didn't negotiate much or look to line up a pre-purchase inspection or whatnot.
So you bought the car off his wife, his family? Is that where the car came from?
I did. Yeah. And of course, just a little interesting paperwork story with getting the title transferred over, right? You need someone to...
Oh, right.
There needs to be some legal paperwork in these scenarios. And so
was that
I ran
complicated?
into a little bit of a problem. Yeah, it was a little problem at the DMV, but frankly, they're a little inconsistent. I went to a different DMV the next day and everything was fine.
That seems to be a worldwide thing. If you have bad luck at one, go to another one and you might be okay, isn't it? It feels like that's always it's a global issue that it's consistent.
Yeah. I walked out with the plates in my hand though, and laughed it off.
This is the thing about your car, and when you sent me the message on Instagram, it was like, this, you hear lots of different Porsche stories, you know what I mean? And you hear them from, people, collectors like Jay Leno or Magnus Walker. I mean, Jay Leno always has the stories like this, where you buy this car off someone, it's a Porsche. I think one of the Porsches he's got has got this story. And, it's like someone enjoyed it for 40 years, then they couldn't drive it anymore. Then it was left in a garage and it was left to ruin. Do you know what I mean? Or someone's passed and then you inherit this car and then all of a sudden it's a car you don't really want, but that's where your Porsche story begins, and it started at a sad point, the passing of your friend. But then, that the car has that story to it, and the story that, you're continuing by taking ownership of this car, and the fact that you and his brother are friends and you're enjoying it together. And I think I think all the listeners will, listening to this now will think, that's a really, it's a really touching story, and it's a really nice part of friendship and Porsche, Porsche ownership. And I'm sure your friend is, looking down and thinking that's just he would be smiling knowing that you're doing this and enjoying his car. I think that's a really nice thing to do.
Yeah, it really felt like, you were keeping it in the family, so to speak, by taking ownership of the car. And I've heard people say these stories of you're a temporary curator of that car, and you should take care of it as best you can so the next person can enjoy it. And so I've been taking that to heart. I've been spending a fair amount of time cleaning it up in a variety of ways, and going to local shows, going to local drives. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I saw the detailing image on your Instagram, and I'm going to tell the listeners now while they're listening, if they want to go to your Instagram, which I have forgotten your Instagram handle. How do you pronounce that? Is it Pet, or I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't know whether that's French or it's not French. Is it?
No, it's funny. It's called a 7-letter, and at my company, they give you the first 4 letters of your last name and the first 3 of your first. So
right. Pet. Right. Okay.
Porgpet.
Yeah. So if you want to go and look at, Pete's Instagram. Sorry, excuse me. If you want to look at Pete's Instagram, it's at BORGPET, Borg Pet on Instagram. Have a look, and you got some pictures of his car and his lifestyle, and you can see the car. And I was going to say about the BBS wheels, I really do like, and I've seen them on other 996s, and I think it was a common choice. Well, not a common choice, but a popular choice. The BBS wheels, and I think they really do look good.
Yeah. I mean, some people want to keep them fully stock. I can totally understand that. I didn't really have a choice when I received this vehicle, but I mean, people, like when I go places, people do point out the wheels.
Are you tempted, Pete? Are you tempted to get a second set of wheels? My 997, when I got it, it came with 20-inch Tecard wheels, which I've spoken about before, which were enormous. I still have them.
Yeah.
I could never sell them. I tried to sell them, but no one would buy them, I should say. And I went back to Lobsters. Are you tempted to get OEM wheels for the car, or are you happy with the BBS?
Yeah, I'm bummed I don't know what happened to the OEM wheels.
Yeah,
with the many owners, but the BBS, they're a little nicked up and stuff. They look great. If I were to buy some, it'd be the Carrera wheel or the Lobsters.
Do you know what was on your car? Do you have the option list or the codes that the wheel that was standard on your car?
I don't know. I'm assuming it was going to be some of the twists that were popular at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, for me here, some people will, our climate and stuff, some people will get a second set of wheels, right, with different tires, so you can, drive on some snow and ice and stuff like that. But for me, I'm parking it in the winter. Winters are really harsh here.
Yeah, I've seen some images of the winter there. It looks terrible. Looks very cold.
Yeah. And I'm storing the car in the winter actually next door. My neighbor is into Porsche as well, and they go to California in the winters, and so I'm parking my car there for keeping an eye on their house.
Oh, that's good. Fantastic. So it's close by. You can check on it. That's even better.
It's about 15 feet.
Even better.
It's really incredible. Yeah.
All right. So you've got the 996. Everyone wants a 996 now. They're very, very sought after. There's so many events in the UK and US and groups starting up about the 996. It's become the popular model. It's not the ugly duckling anymore. No one's scared of the headlights. You're looking after yours. I can see the image on your Instagram, which, as I was saying, where you're detailing it. You've got your blue tape and you're doing some full-on detailing work. I like that. So what are you planning for the 996? Is there anything that you're wanting to add to it? Like, does it have an exhaust? Does it have like a short shifter? Is it the normal long throw that's in 996 Carreras? What are you planning to do with it, Pete?
It's funny you catch me the day after I get back from the racetrack to ask me this question. So
sound or exhaust?
Exhaust. Yeah. I mean, there's some things that I have done to it. It's just like, air filter. The stereo was awry. It wouldn't accept CDs. And it was the Becker stereo, and it was pretty fried. I didn't want to go to a big double din, so I did put a single din Alpine in it. Toiled over which brand to get, wanted to keep this car as analog as I could, but still wanted Bluetooth, if that might contradict each other, but I wanted at least a working radio, and it didn't have to be too crazy. It was actually missing 2 front speakers.
Oh, okay.
So I had a couple of those put in, just got it kind of up to snuff. So the stereo would work. But next, I think, I'm really looking at Pfisters. I think Pfister exhaust. We did some on Steve's car, and it turned out pretty darn well for the money.
Pfister's a great exhaust.
That's probably my next one.
Yeah, and Pfister sounds great on I've got it on my 997, but the Pfister on a 996 sounds pretty fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I'm interested in, and like the shift knob and boot are kind of fried, so I was kind of looking at maybe refreshing that a little bit. I'm not totally hooked on it, but kind of thinking about that a little bit.
Do you think your shifter is the normal standard shifter, the normal throw? Is it a short shifter that someone's put into it?
It's the normal one. It's the long throw normal one.
And how with you said the IMS was done. I'm guessing, was that done by your friend or was done previous to your friend owning?
No, it was done. It was done by Mike. Yep.
It's done by Mike. So did Mike do the clutch
Yep.
at the same time? Do you know if was the clutch serviced, or is that something that's going to come up in your ownership?
I'd have to go back and look at the paperwork again. It felt like they had done clutch at that time. It shifts pretty smoothly. My brother ended up this is how it works, Michael, is that after my brother saw that I got a 911, he started looking around pretty heavily and ended up buying a Boxster. and it shifts pretty well. So I got something to compare it to. It's a 2000 Boxster S. And so I've been able to drive that. It's a little bit different engine and stuff, but be able to compare the two and how they shift. The clutch works well on this car. It shifts well on this car, but my last stick shift was 1999 and a half Volkswagen GTI. So I took about a 20-year hiatus from driving a stick shift.
So how were you? Were you a bit rusty when you first got in?
Oh my gosh, maybe my kids should answer this. They're like, my kids are pretty young. My daughter just got her driver's permit. And so the concept of manual shifting for them is kind of mind blowing. It seems like it's a step in the past for them.
Why would you bother almost? Probably.
Yeah. But I was driving with her the other day and she said, "You're getting pretty good at shifting this car." So I'll take that.
That's good. That's good. So let's go back. Let's go back to when you picked the car up. Let's go back to that experience, because you're with your mates, you pick up the car. And you haven't been into sports cars. You said that quite clearly. You buy cars that you can use for cycling, for snowboarding, going, all those sort of recreational things. So when you pick up the car and you drive it, you're driving it back. How was the feeling when you were driving that car? I'm guessing it was kind of emotional because it's your friend's car. But how was the feeling being in a 911? Did you think I've made the right decision, or did you think, why didn't I do this years ago? How was the feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I was maybe a little apprehensive even after I got it. It was like, what did I do? But driving it obviously didn't put those thoughts in my mind. It was just, man, is this thing is this gonna break down over some time? Is this gonna be a money pit? But the more you learn about them and the more you figure out that they're pretty bomb-proof cars. They're pretty durable. You can fix things yourself. It doesn't have to be horribly expensive. Over time, I started to get a little more comfortable with the decision to buy that car. Driving it home, don't get me wrong, driving it home was a blast. And, you have all the emotions of driving a sports car. But just, where am I going to park this? Is it going to break down and it's going to be a big money pit story and people are going to say, "I told you so"? I did have apprehension like that for a little while. But it just grew on me more and more. And I got to drive it I only got to drive it for like a couple of months before I had to put it into storage.
Okay.
But the storage, man, it was almost like every day I was obsessed about the car, dreaming about the car, thinking about it, for the entire winter. And it was hard. I mean, it was hard to put it away right away. But I was apprehensive at first, for sure. But that's long since gone. It took a few months and that's gone. Those thoughts.
Fantastic. So since you've owned the car then, so you've owned the car for a little while. So since you've owned the car, what work have you done on it yourself? Have you done any servicing work? Have you changed the oil? Have you changed any filters? Have you actually started tinkering with the car? Yeah.
So I, right away, before I put it in storage, I had to get the oil changed, right? So I found an independent dealer, a place called Courtney's Truck Service here in Minneapolis. It's nearby, and I believe that he's a driver with the local club. So he's not an all Porsche, mechanic by any means. They do a lot of trucks and things like that, but he's an enthusiast. So I took it there, and they did the oil change. He did a little bit of an inspection and told me that, things are looking good. You might want to keep your eyes on this or that. And then work I've done myself was just like, hood lifts for the bonnet, and what everyone, the typical training wheels projects, right? Which is hood lifts, the marker lights going from amber to clear. Seems like you gotta check that box if you're new to Porsche. Check.
The strut lifts on the front, actually, they were gone on my car as well. I always thought the wind was too strong and it kept blowing the front lid on my head. And then I realized, I thought, hang on, why does the engine feel so stiff and the front feels so loose? Surely the wind's not that. Every time I seemed to go out in the car and put something in the front, it would blow down. I was like, surely the wind is not that strong. It was blowing, but it wasn't that strong. That's a first thing you always have to look for, isn't it? They've always nearly gone on most cars that are over 10 years, 15 years old.
Yeah, that was a pretty easy one. And then I did an air filter in the engine filter. I did the cabin filter.
Did that make a difference? The engine filter, did it make a difference?
Not really. I think that stuff's like, it's like it's like the placebo effect of, hey, I changed this. It sounds way better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if I could tell the difference, but for $80, why not pop one in there? What else have I done? I've been finding various light bulbs. My front light bulb was gone, like not even in the car. I think they probably took it out so it wouldn't drain the battery.
Right.
I finally found one in the engine compartment that there is a light in there. It was that bulb was fried, so I changed that one, but nothing major. I mean, I did the coolant cap just because it's $20. Why not? That looks like this one has had a coolant tank done on it.
Right.
But those seem to have a shelf life for most people.
Yeah. So how's the interior of the car? You said it was in pretty good condition. Are the seats really worn? The leather's very worn, or the interior is in pretty good condition? Yeah,
I'd say they're a 8 or 9 out of 10. I mean, they're pretty darn clean. I did go out. It's black interior. They had fresh mats, brand new fresh mats. I ended up buying some leather. Leather cleaner and conditioner, like the kind of 2-part thing. And so I've definitely cleaned the seats quite a bit and conditioned them quite a bit to get them feeling fresh. And I don't know, other than that. And I did a phone, the phone mount, the Redline phone mount that pops on there. Just kind of the basics of your first year of ownership. It kind of feels like I'll dive a little bit deeper. But I'm just kind of doing the easy things.
Yeah, it sounds like a simple thing, doesn't it? Cleaning the leather, but it's like when you first take over the car, even just cleaning the interior. I mean, I'm a bit obsessive with cleaning of the 911. I should stop. But when I'm with my car, like I remember when we first bought it, and my wife helped me at the time, and we just literally cleaned the whole interior, and we did it with like warm water and brushes and whatever, and it looks so clean when we bought it. But it's quite amazing how much filth comes off the car when you do that. Like, it really isn't that clean. And like you said, simple things, like new floor mats, simple things like doing the leather seats with those sort of conditioners. You do them a few times and the seats really, the amount of dirt that comes off the leather and the amount of, it really does make a big difference. And it's really just simple things, like you said, that make it make it your own and make it that little bit better, to look at.
Yeah, I've gotten pretty obsessive on just auto detailing in general. I bought, one of those polishing machines for paint and just a variety of products. And I don't know, it's just like a new hobby. It's just like something I can do in the garage that I can zone out. I've got a house full of girls that sometimes you need a little bit of time to yourself out in the garage, so it's definitely one of those types of projects.
Yeah. And that's what we all like about it. The zoning out thing. Washing the 911 is a great thing. You, like you said, you zone out, you clean it, you feel good. You go for a drive afterwards, and it's a good few hours in the afternoon, and it just makes you feel much better. So you said that you've done quite a few thousand miles on the car already. Is that you've taken it on long drives, or you've just been driving around your local area?
Yeah, I've done a little of both. So I've got my hometown's Winona. It's a southeastern Minnesota town, and it's down the Mississippi River Valley, right? So there's bluffs along the way, and you've got some topography, and you're definitely getting out of the city. I've driven the car 3 times down there. It's a couple of hours each way. My folks live down there, so I've taken the car down there and enough baggage for the weekend. It's mostly myself. Like I said, I don't think my wife and kids haven't really caught on to the the Porsche bug yet.
Oh, really? Not yet?
It's more, not yet. It's more, this is more a Pete thing right now for sure.
Is your wife driving the car?
She can drive a stick, but she has not driven this car yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
She has not driven this car yet. But yeah, I've driven it. I've driven on, a couple of rides with like the local Porsche club. You mentioned the Porsche and Pancakes guys. They were really welcoming. It was fun to drive with them, spirited drive, with a big group of people. Other than that.
Yeah. So just to, sorry, Pete, just to tell the listeners, Pete's gone on those drives up Porsche and Pancakes, isn't it? Porsche and Pancakes. So that's James at Auto Amateur. For everyone listening who knows James from Auto Amateur, Pete's in a similar area to James, same region, and he's been on those drives that James has. Does James organize them? I don't even know. Does James organize them, or they're organized through other people?
Yeah, there's a couple. It seems like a couple of guys organize that group. He seems like an informal leader for sure. Yeah. Facebook page, Instagram page, things like that. They'll post that they're having a drive, and they're quite welcoming.
So these drives, when you've been in the 911 and, being anti-sports car, do you really feel what the 911 is all about now? Like the balance? Because I know when I first, and I've mentioned this many times before, and listeners are probably saying, we've heard this story, Michael, but, when I first drove my car and I went on a twisty road, on a windy road, and, being a Carrera 2, being a manual, mine's a 997, but just feeling that weight transfer and feeling it when you're in the curves and feeling that this car is not like any other car. And the speed when you look how fast you can take corners compared to other cars. And I've owned station wagons, Audi station wagons, etc. And just feeling the difference. Did you really notice that when you in the first few months of driving it? Was it something that you thought, hey, this is a really great car?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's hard to compare anything to it, right? It's the weight, it's the instant response from the road to your body through the car. It drives precisely and elegantly. The biggest thing for me is it's like, even at like lower speeds, you don't have to speed in a Porsche to make it feel like a sports car. Some people see those cars and say, well, how fast does that go? And just assume that you need to drive fast to enjoy the car. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I like to drive fast, but it's twisty roads. It's, average speeds feel very fast at a car that small. It's the experience. It's just directly from the road to the body, and that's what I noticed right away with the car. And it's light. It's incredible. That everyone wants to race on the road, though. They see your car and they can pull up a pickup truck and want to test you and stuff. There's just something about, Guards Red that attracts goofballs sometimes that way.
They all want to race you. Yeah, you're right. That is. Yeah, that is about the 911 though, isn't it? It's the weight. It's the fact that you sit so low. Like, you forget sometimes, and when you've been in another car and then you get into the 911 and you realize how low you are sitting in the car, like you really are sitting on the road. And my car's slightly lowered, which you said your car was lowered, so you do feel like you're even lower. But it is a really, really great experience. So, someone's coming to your region, someone's coming to the US, and you touched on the fact about the drives before and about the Pancakes drives and stuff like that. But if someone's coming to Minnesota, where would you say, if you can get a 911 or you can get a sports car or you want to go out for a spirited drive, where would you say that the best place to take your car is in your region?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like along the river valley or up north. So we've got like Lake Superior's up in the northern area of the state. And so there's a lot of just incredible views and twisty roads up there. And then like the eastern to southeastern part of the state is where the Mississippi River cuts through, right? And there's all these roads that come off of the river and go up into these valleys. And so we've been driving a fair amount over in Wisconsin. It's not far from here. and that's where one of those Porsche and Pancakes drives was. They seem to go there quite often. But I've ridden bikes through a lot of these areas, so you kind of get an idea of what the roads look like. And it's great to go back with cars after you've kind of scoped them out. But I'd say the eastern part of our state really has some good twisty stuff with a lot of really good views.
So are there any road trips you're going to plan further afield in the US? Are there any roads that you want to take your 996 on with a group of buddies, or, join a Porsche club or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there is, I'm definitely intrigued by doing some weekend stuff. So after going to Road America and seeing a lot of people drive their cars down there and camp right out of the car, we took a van this year, with all our camping gear, just so we could not be anxious about our cars being there. But it seems like next year, driving the cars and camping out of them. And there's still time this year to do some camping. So I'm thinking about doing some sort of, weekender. There are some folks that are going out to Utah for this drive that sounds intriguing, right? It's Overcrest Productions, I believe it's called. And they're putting together like a rally in Utah. It seems a little far for me now, but
Porsche
I've got
rally
a couple
or
friends
just
that are going. Yeah.
Porsche rally or just different cars?
It's a Porsche rally. I think they probably accept others, but they're big Porsche fans. So I've got two friends that are going out there for that. And to me, it just felt like a little long for me right now to go to Utah from Minnesota. It's definitely a 2-day drive out there.
All right. Wow.
But I'm intrigued by camping out of the car for sure. So okay. I'm looking for my next trip.
Okay, Pete, here's a question for you. And I'm sure you've seen this guy on Instagram. Are you tempted to do what 996 Road Trip does? Have you seen his Instagram?
I don't know if I have.
Okay, you've got to look at 996 Road Trip on Instagram. And you can put the tent on top of your 996. He has the tent on top of his 996 Carrera 4S. And he camps and he drives it everywhere. Is that something you'd be tempted to do? I mean, have you got the racks for your bike? You've got the racks for your bike already, right? The racks are on the Porsche or not yet?
Well, it's funny you ask. This is one where I'm hung up on, Michael. So it's like, all right, am I Porscheing? Am I Porscheing or am I biking? And should I combine the two? I'm a little hung up. I've been looking at the racks and I've got some interest, but I'm just not sure if I'm going to take the plunge and rack it out. I like the idea.
I saw I don't know if you've seen it, Pete. I saw the coolest thing on Porsche's YouTube channel the other day, and I think it's for the Gran Turismo, the Taycan Gran Turismo. And they've got a bike rack that goes on the back of the car, and it tilts, and then it goes back up, and they show you the girl putting it on, how easy it is to put on. They really, really have thought about that bike rack. I mean, it's not a 911 bike rack, but if you're into bikes and you look at that, you think, man, that is really, really cool. That's a very, very cool bike rack to put on your Porsche. I'm a bit keen on getting, and I've spoken about it in previous podcasts, and Steve, my host on the Friday's episode, Steve, the host of the podcast, I've been saying that I really want to get one of those roof box on my 997 when I go back to Australia. Because I've seen a guy in Thailand that has a really cool Instagram called Tennister. I think it's Tennister. And he has a yellow 997 Carrera S, and he has the box on it, and he takes it camping and stuff like that. So I thought that was something to do. I haven't done it yet, but I'm thinking about it. Yeah,
just like a Thule box or a rocket box.
Toolbox. Thule box. A Thule box on Porsche Racks. Yeah, most people do it with the Porsche roof racks, which I think are the racks that fit the 996 and the 997. So you get the Porsche, the OEM racks, and the Thule box is one box that actually is a perfect size. It's not the huge one. I think it's the medium size.
Yeah, they got a variety of sizes. Yeah, I run those.
So you could do that to go camping instead. Yeah.
Yeah, I run those in my wagon in the winter for snowboards and skis and all that stuff. And I've seen a couple of 911s with the box on the roof, and it does look pretty incredible. That would be fun.
Yeah, I guess it's good if you're going skiing or snowboarding and stuff. You could just take your Porsche on your road trip.
You can put a ton of gear up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how the aerodynamics will go on the 911 though with that on the roof. It'd be interesting to know the weight, how it actually works. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd be curious about the sound. Usually when you put those racks on, you get a little bit of wind noise, but I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah, do they howl quite a lot? I heard that the other day. Someone was saying that. Do they make quite a lot of noise? Do they?
It just, you can definitely tell when you have a rack on the roof of the car that it's catching some wind for sure.
All right, Pete, we're almost at the end. what else? Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners before we finish today?
Not really. I mean, I want to thank you for having me on. I've just been fascinated with the whole community, the whole culture, getting into it. I wouldn't necessarily say I was anti-sports car. I just didn't think I was there yet. And, but when are you going to be there? You got to take the plunge sooner or later. And if it's something you want to do in life, do it and don't look back. You don't want to be, letting things slip through your hands that are right there. And I'm glad I took the plunge to get this car. It's been a ton of fun. I'm making a lot of new friendships doing it. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think you're right. Like you said, you were anti-sports car. It didn't fit your, the things you wanted to do with it. And, a lot of people on Owner Stories have been on Owner Stories. There's a lot of people that want a Porsche, you know what I mean? And can't get there and then have to wait, 30, 40 years and they'll get it when they're 45 or 50. But they eventually get there and they enjoy it. And then there's other people who somehow, I guess, fall into it in a way where they've had another car and they somehow come across a Porsche and they buy it and then they realize, once you have a Porsche, and I always say this, once you have a Porsche, you never look back because you realize how good the car is. And I know a lot of people look at 911s and say they look the same. We know that story, but it's the engineering that's gone in over all these years and the fine-tuning that Porsche do. And of course, Porsche have quality issues and things go wrong, IMS and all those sort of things, GT3 engines blowing up, going on fire. These things happen, but in general, they're a really reliable car. And I was a bit like you too before, but when I thought that, Steve, my friend, he had one, he's had many 911s, thinking that the maintenance cost is going to be crazy, and it's actually not that bad, but you have to be, and obviously for people that do the work themselves, they can save some money, but in general, it's not that bad. If you go to independents, you save a bit of money here and there. So I think it's I don't know, it's like European cars everyone gets scared of, but you shouldn't be that scared of getting into 911. The problem with the 911 at the moment, Pete, as you know, is that you can't get, I don't know how the 996's prices are going in your area or whatever, but they seem to be going up very, very quickly.
Yeah, extremely. Like I'm guessing all of 40% in a year. But again, to me, it's not
really,
to me.
Wow, that much?
It's that much for sure here. But to me, it's not that, it's like, hey, I could do well financially if I sold this car, but I don't intend to sell this car anytime soon, but it does make me feel a little bit better about that decision if I had any question in my mind other than the pure enjoyment I'm getting out of it.
Yeah, it's not about the money. It's about the experience. You didn't buy this car. You didn't take on this car to make money. You took it on because it was your friend's car. You took it on to get this new experience, which you didn't think you wanted, and now you're really enjoying it. And I think the listeners will all, we'll all love that story. You know what I mean? It really is, like I said, it started at a sad point, but it's great that you got your friend's car. It's great that you're enjoying it when you didn't think you'd wanted a sports car, but now you do. And it's great that you can share it with your friend's brother and other friends that also have Porsches. Yeah,
it's been nothing but fun.
All right, Pete, I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on today. I think we'll end it there, but thanks for coming on PorscheCooled Owner Stories and telling the listeners the story of your 996.1 Carrera 2.
Right on. Cheers. Everybody enjoy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Pete. Okay, everyone. That was Pete coming in from, why do I keep thinking Minneapolis, Pete? I don't know what's wrong with me. From Minnesota. Hey. Pete coming in from Minnesota in the US and sharing the story about his 996.1, like I said, Carrera 2, Guards Red, that was owned by his friend, and he's taken it on and he's enjoying it to the fullest and enjoying the Porsche community. All right, everyone. Thanks again, Pete. Thanks for listening to the PorscheCooled Podcast. That's it for today. Bye for now.